Hi, my name is SpongeBob.
Yeah, go for it. You're in a good shot. Oh yeah, get closer. Go down. Perfect. Yep. I like it.
Welcome to That's a Reach podcast, where we sit down to talk through questions about the Bible, theology, the gospel, and more, and how they influence your everyday life. You may have had these questions yourself, so we hope you find this conversation encouraging and clarifying in your pursuit of Jesus.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to That's a Reach podcast, episode 24.
24. Yeah.
24. My name is Bert, and I'm here with Pastor Taylor and Pastor Matt. How are you guys doing?
I am good. Still.
Me too.
Josh is here.
Wonderful.
Josh is good.
Okay, we have a few questions for you. This first one. How should believers create healthy boundaries within friendships with other believers and non-believers?
With other believers and non-believers.
Yeah. So how can they create healthy boundaries within their friendships?
Well, I would to start off by talking about the non-believers. I've had some conversations recently about those that are either newer to the faith or they're trying to walk more closely with the Lord. We're supposed to be around believers. We need to be pointing to them, witnessing to them, so on and so forth. But if your BFF is a non-Christian, then you're being influenced by not Christians, and that's a problem. And so it doesn't mean that we have to ditch our friend group when we come to faith. Maybe if they're causing problems, but we need to be consistent in who we are listening to. In the previous episode, we're talking about hearing a word from God and the influences that we have from other people outside of us. We need to be getting wise counsel. Wise counsel is not coming from non-Christians. They might have good ideas. Maybe they're really good with finances, whatever. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about having healthy boundaries and how they influence us. And so with non-Christians, we want to keep it in the right place. And that has a lot more to do with us and how we think about it. Realizing if I come to faith and I'm hanging out with my old friends, I'm not there just like old times as one of the guys. I am kind of there on mission at that point.
Sure.
And so my relationship with them has to change.
Yeah, and part of the question is who's influencing who?
Yeah.
Here's what I see a lot of. I see a lot of young adults that get serious about their faith and realize that their friends are influencing them to be living in sin, living in their old ways. And then there's this hang up. Because they go, well, if I ditch them, then who's going to share the gospel with them? And it's like, are you sharing the gospel with them now? Because if you're not, and you're not going to, because every time you're around them, they cause you to actually compromise your testimony, then actually you sharing with the gospel, it would be better for you to actually withdraw, because that tells them, hey, you're serious about the fact that something's changing your life, and, ready for this? You are not their hero.
Mm-hmm.
You are not the person that's going to save them, whether you're the one that shares the gospel with them or not. You have to trust that God wants them to be saved, and God may use the fact that you got serious about your faith and dipped to, now again, it's not to be flaky on people. Like, you want to make it clear, like, hey guys, like, I love you guys, but every time I'm around you, I act this way, and I just want to take my faith seriously, and I can't do that anymore. And so I'm not going to be around as much. And they may, there's varying responses to that. But the point is, maybe the next person that shares the gospel with them, they actually listen because you testified that it's real, that it's important, that it matters.
Yeah, your life was changed, and
they
saw that.
And you're not doing that by just hanging out with them and continuing to live in sin.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, if you can tell me, if you can look me in the face and say, no, I know that I'm the stronger influence. I'm the one sharing the gospel with them. They're not causing me to live in sin. I need to be there to continue to love on them. Great, do it. Awesome. You're on mission. You're not being drugged down. Like, that's great. But if you're trapped in a situation where you think I'm the only person, they're never going to get saved if I'm not there to share the gospel with them, and yet you're not sharing the gospel with them, not in word or in action, then you're doing nothing. Yeah. You're actually making it worse. At that point, then maybe it is time to step away and allow God to share the gospel with them through someone else, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. As you're talking about that, it was also making me think about how the Lord uses us and the way that we act and react. We talked about this in the last episode too. The way it shifts, like that's the testimony that we have, and if we aren't actually acting and reacting in a way that is Christ-like and being Christ around our lost friends, then we're not really doing anything. And what the enemy wants us to do, he doesn't want us to be gospel influences in their lives. He wants us to be ineffective and unproductive. So the way that he does that is he's going to be like, yeah, it's cool, man. Just, you're a Christian now. Just be the same as you've always been. Show them that you're not a weirdo by just being the same.
Yeah.
Be the same guy. That's the enemy talking to
Yeah.
you. Like, the Lord wants you to be different, not to be a weirdo.
Yeah, right.
But to live in a way that, morally and responsibility wise and all these other things that you're growing in your sanctification and in your maturity. And sometimes that's going to be like, yeah, I'm not going to go to that party because I know what you guys are going to be doing. So
I heard somebody justifying using like coarse language.
Yeah.
And they said, well, how, if I'm too perfect to connect with people, then, and I was like, you mean like Jesus?
Yeah.
Like, who was absolutely perfect and still connected with unbelievers and,
Yeah.
and sinners and told them the good news of the gospel? It's like, yeah, that's the point.
If I don't sin just a little bit, I'll seem weird.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah.
Because we're supposed to stand out.
Yeah.
Because we are not dead. We're alive
Yeah.
in Christ now. And so we are different. Yeah. But so on the other half of the question, though, I'm not sure how to interpret this. How should believers create healthy boundaries within friendships with other believers?
Yeah. I mean,
What's is this talking romantically?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think this is, I mean, given the context of the question, it sounds like a question about just friendships.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, again, post another question. We'll answer it, be more specific. But it is kind of I would tell you this. This is the most generic advice I can give to this question. Establish your priorities correctly. If your priorities are established correctly, then boundaries are set naturally.
Yeah.
It's like, have you had your quiet time today? No? Then nobody can invite you to do anything.
Yeah.
Because you need to go have a quiet time. You know what I mean? And
so
it's
if they're
like,
not like sucking up your time.
yes. And so it's like, you want boundaries. Boundaries come from understanding boundaries are protecting something. That's the point of a boundary. So if you don't have anything that you're protecting, then what good are the boundaries? They're just random.
Mm-hmm.
So know what you're protecting, and then you establish boundaries based on what's important to you. What are you trying to protect?
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. How does someone forgive another? I know that's probably extremely broad, so if we need to narrow it, let's say in the context of forgiving others before we accepted Christ, like the people from our old lives.
There's a lot to that. That's a very deep question. I think one element to this is definitely, the practical application of how, which you're struggling. Maybe you're bitter towards somebody or something like that. Your starting point is praying for them. And even praying, I went through a phase of time with someone who I was not able to forgive for a long time. And what I started with, God's not faked out. I didn't start with praying God, I want to forgive this person. It's like, no, I didn't want to forgive them. So I didn't lie to God about where I was with it. I started where I was and I said, God, I need you to help me even want to forgive them. Because right now I have no desire to forgive that person. And it's like I started with the genuine place I was at and let God do the healing he needed to do, and then another key element is forgiveness does not mean just getting over something or even saying that it wasn't wrong.
Mm.
It's relinquishing your right to the justice.
Yeah.
It's saying, okay, that person wronged me, but I'm going to put the onus to handle that in God's hands.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to handle it. I'm not going to get justice.
I think that's a really important understanding of that because what are we trying to accomplish by not forgiving somebody?
Yeah.
Like, what are you trying to do?
You want to get even, right?
You're,
You
you're
get
trying to
something,
hold on
yeah.
to stuff. We talk a lot about being open-handed. You're grasping onto what is not yours. Like,
Yeah.
vengeance is not yours.
Yeah, right.
Like, justice is not yours to decide. That's the Lord's. And so we live in an open-handed way to release that desire for us to have that vengeance and to love them, because we love because Christ first loved us. 1 John 4:19. And so if we know that God loves us and we are a Christian, because the context that they gave here was talking about even stuff before we accepted Christ. How do we forgive those? Well, you now have accepted Christ and you have the love of Christ in your heart. And so because of that, you are now able to love that person. They didn't sin against, they might have sinned against you in something they might have hurt you with, but ultimately on an eternal level, they sinned against the Almighty God who created you and them.
Yeah.
And so we realize, again, going back to releasing my desire for vengeance or justice or whatever, and realizing, man, I also deserve condemnation.
Mm-hmm.
I realize that because I've come to faith and I've put my faith in realizing my need for righteousness, and I can't gain that all on Christ. I cast that on Christ, and He gives me His righteousness.
Yet I was forgiven.
I was
yeah.
forgiven. So then I don't have the response, or I don't have the right to hold that over their head, as if I'm the one sitting in judgment over them, demanding that they pay for something. The Bible is very clear on that. That is not our place to sit in that. And coming to that realization isn't just like a fine, I guess I won't, seek vengeance and justice over them. It's a release. Like, I've been in those situations where you have to forgive somebody, and it's hard kind of stepping up to the plate to accomplish that. But then, man, that's what you need to do. Like, it's going to feel a lot better. And like you said, that starts with usually praying for God to give you the mental, physical, and emotional power to get to that point, to want to forgive them.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's a process. It can be hard depending on what the situation is. We're not making light of it and just being like, oh yeah, just do it.
Yeah.
Just forgive them.
Just forgive
like
them.
that. Not at all. It is difficult, but you gotta have perspective of who you are and what you have the right to do.
Yeah.
And you don't have the right to vengeance and justice.
And along with everything you're saying, there's this brokenheartedness. When you get hurt, when you realize there's a maturity that comes when you go, wow, that hurt me so badly. I did that to Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, that's what breaks your heart. That's what makes you go, wow, I can't hold this against them. I did that and more to Jesus. I was forgiven, which means I should turn around and pray for that person to be forgiven, because, man, that I can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
That's the mature response to being hurt,
Yeah. And it's not just beautiful messianic sentimentality to think about Jesus being tortured and beaten and hung on a cross, and Him saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That was in the moment as they're actively, physically sinning against Him.
Yeah.
Of Him praying for their forgiveness, that they would have mercy. And so, in that same way, we're not just this isn't just like, do the right thing and relinquish your right to justice, whatever. It's saying, be like Christ.
Yeah.
And realize your position in this situation, that in the end, the Ancient of Days, the God of all creation, He will have justice and vengeance. He says He will. And so, release that desire for you to have it in the moment. Even Jesus Himself said, God, forgive what they're doing right now, because now's not the time for justice. It will come later. And so we are Christ-like when we also relinquish that and forgive them and love them, just like Christ loved. Again, 1 John 4:19, we love because He first loved us.
Yeah.
It's good. Okay. I appreciate what Matt said about consuming media in community in his previous sermon on 2 Timothy 2. How does social media play into Matt's philosophy of consuming media in a social context?
That I had never contemplated until that question. Maybe that shows my age a little bit. I don't know. But it is a really good question, though, because one of the things, so for context, that those that didn't hear my sermon, it was on 2 Timothy 2. I don't remember if it was the first or second half of that, because I preached 2 sermons on 2 Timothy. But one of the things that we started doing in my family as we Keith and I started having kids. See, our oldest is he'll be 10 in a few months, which is crazy that he'll be double digits. But before that, when I was a younger dude, I love Halo, and I would love to play it over and over, and it would just suck away the hours of my time. And when you first get married and you realize, I've talked to especially a lot of guys about this, and it's like, yeah, married, got the wife at home, and she's tired, she's gonna go to bed, and I'm gonna stay up and play video games and not go to bed with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
It's just grow up, man. Like cut that out. And it took me a while to realize the how this it just didn't gel. Like there's some discontinuity there with what I was trying to do and what I wanted to do. And so I started to realize, as I was learning more about who God created us to be, we're created in community. I've said that several times on this podcast. Man, so much that the enemy wants us to do is to suck us away from community. And some of our bad habits, our vices, our addictions, whatever, it separates us. It makes us sit in our own little space, we're doing our own thing. And we were just, before we turned on the camera, we were lamenting that there is not more split screen video games like there used to be. I played Halo for the first time ever on a 13-inch TV, split screen 4 ways, and it was like the best time of my life because I was hanging out with guys playing in community. And this is, not to just keep harping on being an old guy talking about Halo, but I realized as I was getting older, as I had kids and I would, want to play games with them and stuff, I was like, man, I sunk in hours, days even, into playing Halo by myself. I can't remember any of those times.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the realization came from for me. It's just gone into the ether of my mind because there was nothing meaningful for me to connect it to. But what are we create? If we're created for community with God and with other people, like I have memories of doing stuff with guys. Not just video games, like all of the things I did as a young dude playing around. Like I remember those times.
Mm-hmm.
Now as a family man and having kids, like I remember the times that I took my kids on trips or we went to the park and did this, that, and the other. Like those things are cemented in my mind because I was created to have those relationships. So my media consumption, when it separated me from people, like that time of sinking in that media, it kind of just evaporates. Like it's not there anymore in my memory. But I remember watching a movie and laughing with friends. I remember seeing, whatever movie I was standing in line for the releases of episodes 2 and 3
Mm-hmm.
For Star Wars. I remember standing in line doing that. And those things are cemented in my mind. But all of the hours I spent playing video games alone, I don't remember any of that. And I know some people will watch movies all the time, and I can't count on, like, I don't know the last time I have watched a movie by myself. I just don't do it. Not because I love movies, but I've gotten to the habit where I will only watch stuff with other people because it makes a memory. We can laugh together. We can quote it together. It becomes a thing. And so with social media as the topic, that also sucks you away from that. And I would say,
yeah, the lie of social media is it's making you more connected. And
Yeah.
it's definitely not.
Yeah, and we've seen all of the memes, or whatever of people all being in the same room, all on their phones,
Yeah.
scrolling together. It's like they haven't looked at each other in hours, but they're all together, and that's super sad. And so, how does it fit into my philosophy about consuming media in a social context? Well, I would say using your phones, because of people finally getting to the realization that that's a problem, there are screen limits that we can set. So set screen limits. I've taken most social media off of my phone to where I can't just sit and scroll it. And if I want to engage with it, I'll go to my computer where it's like I am sitting to do a thing now. And I'm not going to it's not just constantly available to me. If I can't just scroll Instagram whenever I want to. And that's to protect me from the time suck that happens there. And so if you need to take it off your phone and move it somewhere else, or if you need to set the screen limits on that, that's the thing. We were also just joking before we turn on the camera because sometimes Kiva and I will just sit and scroll funny reels on Instagram because it's like, well, I don't really feel like watching a show, but let's just laugh at crazy things on Instagram. That's hilarious. And so we will do that in context. And I know all of us have experienced that where it's like, I can't wait to go show my friends this reel, or instead of just immediately sending it to them, like go for us here in the office. Sometimes AJ will come barge around the corner and show me a reel on his phone because that is us doing things in community. So I think with all those things, video games, movies, TV shows, social media, not doing it for hours alone. Like think about how much time that you do that. You can even go on your phone and see like how much time have I spent on each app. And when you realize, man, I spent 6 hours on YouTube yesterday, it's like, that's a problem, dude. Like, you watched 6 hours of YouTube alone yesterday? Like, is that what you want to look back on your life and realize that's where you spent your time? Probably not.
Yeah.
And so set screen limits on there. You can set time limits on the apps to where you just can't do it anymore after a certain point. And if you want to enjoy it and laugh, save it for later. Laugh with your friends together in community.
Yeah, I would add one more thing to this, which is anything you're doing on social media edifying to you or others?
Yeah.
If
Absolutely.
you can say, if you can look me in the face and say, what I do on social media actually edifies me or it edifies others, hey, stay on social media. Have a great time. But I know that there are plenty of young adults that know it's sucking the life out of you and it's causing you to sin.
Yeah.
Okay, well now we're not talking about screen time. We're not talking about limits. We're talking about deleting it.
Yeah.
Getting rid of it. And listen, I promise you, you will not miss it. Real life is not in your social media apps. It's not on your phone. And if you might miss it initially, but if you will delete that stuff and stay away from it, there's a whole world still out there that's not in the screen in the palm of your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And you can live in that world, and it's great. Again, if you're not who I'm talking to, maybe you're the person you're like, but I go on there and I post Bible verses and I read, I watch encouraging videos about theology. Okay, great. Have a blast.
Yeah.
But if you go on there and the first 4 hours I'm just wasting time, and then last 2 I'm looking at things I definitely shouldn't look at. Okay, it's time to delete it.
Yeah.
It's time to delete it. Like, and I'm not talking about off your phone. I'm talking about kill your account so you cannot get back to it.
Yeah.
It's not about how close can I be without sinning. It's about how far away do I have to be safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's different for everybody.
Yes.
But that's why I removed Instagram as an example off of my phone, because it's one of those things where it's designed, in case you didn't know this, everyone should know this, it is designed to suck you in and it preys on our addictive behaviors of how we are as humans. That's why someone starts looking at one bit of content and it keeps feeding you a more and more extreme version of whatever that thing is, because they know it will make you scroll more. The more your eyes are locked on that, the more ads you see, the more money they make. And so they are not working for your best interest with social media apps. And so is there fun stuff on there? Is it funny? Yes, absolutely. Sure. But doing that in a limited capacity in community, I'm not going to be tempted to scroll through Instagram models when I'm sitting with other people.
Yeah.
And so if I don't have Instagram on my phone, it's not going to be a problem. And also think about this, as our context is young adults that are starting their lives and their careers and habits and stuff in life. Next time you go to Walmart and you're standing in line, look around. Is everyone looking at their phone and scrolling? Don't be like everyone else.
Yeah.
Like, I intentionally will not pull my phone out when I am in those places, because I know I don't want to be that way. Every time I'm the slightest bit bored, I shouldn't pull out my phone to pacify my boredom.
Yeah.
Yeah, to medicate my boredom. Like, you want to hear, going back to I guess it was the previous episode about hearing a word from the Lord. Well, if you're constantly distracted, if you're constantly being fed, even, let's not even just say garbage, but just
high
noise,
volume. Yeah, high volume.
You're not going to hear a word from the Lord.
Yeah.
If you want to hear a word from the Lord, be bored. Turn it off. Go take a walk in the park, stand in the checkout line, and just look around. Pray for people. Notice people.
One of the great analogies in the Conquer series is the whole, maybe you ever had a strawberry. Strawberry's sweet and delicious, and it's actually a little bit good for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, now go eat a Snickers bar and then go eat a strawberry. The strawberry now tastes bitter and sour. Why? Because you're basically forcing yourself to, like, OD on the sugar with the artificial, just punch of what a candy bar is. So now the natural sweet thing doesn't taste good anymore. How hard is it to enjoy normal life when you're medicating on just the highest dopamine hits you can take all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrible for you.
Yeah.
It's like, and then we wonder why we're addicted to stuff and we can't sleep and we have, you know, all these medical problems and mental health problems and anxiety. And it's like, yeah, it's all symptoms of this behavior that hasn't been natural for literally all of human
Ever.
history until the
Yeah.
invention of smartphones.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, I think with this topic, with social media and stuff, I can link some things in the description. There was a news thing I watched a while ago on it was on YouTube, but it was a Canadian thing, and where they went, it was like one of those, you know, marketplace things, like, we're going to go, like, figure out, like, are people cheating you on this, that, and the other, and they'll do that. But they did this thing where they were looking at social media apps. They went to, like, Silicon Valley in California, and they were interviewing different CEOs that make apps and stuff. And they were like, so you are working on human behavior and psychology and all this stuff to make your apps to where people can't look away? And they're like, yeah, that's basically what we do, because it makes us more money. I'm like, huh, do you think that's bad for people? It's like, yeah, probably, you know, but, you know, it helps the shareholders and all that. Like, okay, you know, because they were investigating it for kids' sake. And they're like, well, do you let your kids? Like, oh, no, my kids don't have smartphones.
Yeah.
It's like the people that are making it, like, oh, yeah, I won't let them have it because I know it's not good for them. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Or like recently, like, if anyone's aware of, like, the Facebook files and stuff, like, they know that it was damaging to people, particularly young girls. But if they just all of a sudden stopped what they were doing, then it's not good financially for them. So they're just slowly trying to figure out, well, how can we still make a lot of money but not make little girls want to commit suicide because they don't look like a model? Like, we can't figure that out. But so they were just willingly continuing to harm people because it was making them money.
Well, I mean, the porn industry has this going on too. They caught on tape a porn executive saying, yeah, we actively try to shape people's desires and change them. And it's like they're trying to suck you in and then actually adjust what you want to the point where you can't even find it in the real world. Yeah. Unless you're jumping through some serious hoops.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's what I said earlier. The algorithm gives you a more extreme thing of what, if you start watching fail videos, you know, like, you're going to see some pretty wild stuff after a couple of hours of scrolling fail videos, because the more extreme things will keep you interested longer. It's the car wreck, you know, thing. You're driving by a car wreck, you're going to look. So if they just keep showing you more and more extreme things of curiosity, whether that be pornography or fail videos or whatever, you're going to just keep seeing more and more stuff because they don't want you to look away.
Are you the one that showed me that video of the YouTube video of the animated guy walking and getting a dopamine hit?
Yes.
We should link that.
I'll link that. Yeah, it's the sad kiwi video.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, it shows that, and it is very sad. And that's not, you know, people look at it and whatever their background is, they can look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's pornography, or that's, you know, the drugs that I'm trying to get away from, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's anything that's giving you the dopamine hit,
all of that's
keeping you sucked in, and it's making you unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I can link that as well. But yeah, so how does all this fit into my philosophy? I don't think you have to avoid it like the plague. If it's unhealthy, then I think what Taylor said, it's like, if you know it's causing you to stumble, then cut it out.
Yeah, get rid of it.
Like anything else that we're doing, just cut it out entirely. But be responsible, because going back to what we're talking about, you know, healthy boundaries and being a mature adult, there are ways of creating healthy boundaries, even on the phones themselves, of setting up the time limits and, you know, locking apps out and all that other stuff. Just be healthy and responsible, and learn how to do things in community. Invite others in with you, because that's the way God has created us. He's created us to be in community with Him and with one another, and that's going to fill us up. Whatever your personality is, I don't be like, well, I'm just such a shut-in introvert person. I'm like, okay, well then pray that God grows you out of that, because you were created for community. Be around people, enjoy each other, laugh together. That's what God wants us to do.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of That's a Reach podcast. Send in your questions.
Thanks, Bert.
Thanks for joining us on That's a Reach. We are pastors and leaders from the Reach Young Adult Ministry at Evergreen Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and these questions come from those in our young adult community here. If you're from a different church and context, we hope you found the discussion beneficial and edifying as you pursue spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ in your culture and context.